Welcome to In the Arena of Success. This podcast is where courage meets opportunity. I'm your host, Henry Beeman, and every week we step into the arena with visionaries, innovators, and trailblazers from all walks of life. We dive deep into the heart of success and uncover the strategies, the struggles, and the unwavering spirit of those who overcome. The real question is, are you willing to step into the arena and fight for your success? Because in this arena, success is not a destination. It's a journey, and it starts right now. Today on the podcast, I have U.S. Army Major General John Davis. He is the Vice President and Federal Chief Security Officer for Palo Alto Networks, where he assists governments around the world with successfully preventing cyber breaches. Prior to joining Palo Alto Networks, John served as the Senior Military Advisor for Cyber for the Undersecretary of Defense and as the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Cyber Policy. Wow, that's a mouthful. And prior to those assignments, he served in multiple leadership and command positions throughout the Army in special operations, cyber, and in information operations. Sir, thanks so much for being here with me today.
It's my pleasure, Henry.
So we're going to jump right in to the lightning round questions. And the first one of those is, where is your hometown and what is it known for?
My hometown is Clewiston, Florida. It's just north of the Everglades. And because it's sugarcane country, it's best known as the sweetest town in America.
That's a great place to be from. Do you prefer cats or dogs?
Dogs.
That's a pretty common answer for that one. And what kind of music do you listen to?
Henry, in my world, there's only two kinds of music, good and bad. I prefer the good, and good covers a wide variety of different types of music.
What's currently on your reading list?
I'm currently reading Cosmic Consciousness. It's by a guy named Richard. I think his last name. As a matter of fact, I have the book here. Richard Bucke. It was written over a century ago, and it's a very, very fascinating book. The reason I'm reading it is because apparently it made a big impact on Steve Jobs when he read it back in the 60s.
Okay. Wow, that's something to add to the reading list. If it impacted Steve Jobs, that's a good reason to read it.
I agree.
Speaking of that, it kind of leads into the next question. Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Wow, biggest inspiration in life. I would have to say my dad. He was a great dad, always there, always supported me. He was an easygoing guy, but you never wanted to get his temper up, because if that happened, you knew things were very serious.
Absolutely. I can relate to that very clearly with my father. Next question on the list is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that's easy. I think I was maybe about 4 or 5 years old, and I would spend a lot of time with my grandmother on my father's side. And I remember very distinctly her telling me, she was always very nice, but she was very serious for a moment. She said, I'm going to tell you something that you better pay attention to, because it's the most important thing you're ever going to hear for the rest of your life. And it was the golden rule, treat others as you would have them treat you. And I think that, that has served me very well for the rest of my life. And the times that I regret most in my life are when I did not live up to that.
Absolutely. That's a solid piece of advice from Grandma. Well, John, where does your story start? How does a guy from the sweetest town in America go on to become a 2-star general in the Army?
Yeah, Henry, I think you and your audience might find my story interesting and likely a bit unique. I would say it started in 1975, so, almost 50 years ago, when I was a junior in high school. Football was a very big thing in southern Florida back then. It probably still is. And I was playing high school football, and a recruiter came up to me when I was a junior after a game and said, hey, how would you like to go to West Point? And I asked him, what's West Point? And so I had no idea what West Point was. And I asked my dad about it, and my dad had been in the Navy. And he knew that it was a free education and a really good one. And so he said, hey, You should follow up on that. So I applied to all the military academies. I got accepted by the Naval Academy first, and then West Point made an offer. They said, if you'll turn down the Naval Academy and go to West Point, we'll make sure that you get here. And so I asked my dad again. He was in the Navy. He said, you don't want to spend your life on ships, go Army. So I really didn't think too much about joining the Army, just playing football. And so I applied and got accepted by West Point. And then the first summer at West Point, it's called Beast Barracks. I lost too much weight and I didn't make the varsity cut. So they wanted me to go to the 150-pound team. And I said, nah, that's not why I came here. So I started doing all kinds of other things I had never done before, like kayak, boxing, rugby, lacrosse, and just loved it. So that's what got me into West Point. And then after graduating in 1980, I had a very unusual path. First of all, I should let you know, I got every single assignment that I ever asked for, beginning with my first choice at West Point, which was to go infantry and get assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division. And that went all the way through to my very last assignment as the first senior military cyber advisor at the Pentagon. So, and speaking of the Pentagon, you're probably looking at the only person that avoided the Pentagon for 32 years and then asked to go there. And I built the job title and the assignment. It was finally approved, and I actually loved what I did. I think it was a very important job. So I started as a rifle platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne Division and second of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and in the division long range reconnaissance platoon from 1981 to 1984 after graduating from Ranger School. And then after the 82nd, I commanded two companies in the Berlin Brigade, Charlie Company, 4th of the 502nd Infantry, and the Berlin Brigade Headquarters Company. And that was after graduating from Pathfinder School. And then following Berlin, I commanded a rifle company in 2nd Ranger Battalion, Charlie Company, 275. After the Rangers, I deployed to Korea and served as adjutant of the United Nations Command Security Force Joint Security Area in the Korean DMZ. And then I returned for my second tour with the 82nd Airborne Division as the Secretary General Staff and then Battalion XO of 1st of the 325th Infantry, and then later as aide-de-camp to General Hugh Shelton from 1992 to 1995. He went on to become chairman. My first joint assignment
That's cool.
Was to the U.S. Atlantic Command. It no longer exists, but this was 1995 to 1998. And I was a ground operations planner and oversaw the United Nations operations in Haiti, deploying many times to Haiti during 95 and 96. But during that assignment, my entire career path took a very unusual turn. We had a combatant commander then. It was a Marine named General Sheehan, and he had previously been the Joint Staff J3 and was tuned in to all these special, spooky things called information warfare. And he wanted to employ information warfare to prevent the need for U.S. Atlantic Command to conduct combat operations in our area of responsibility. And if we couldn't prevent it, then to be able to execute it more efficiently and more effectively. And so he tasked the J3 of U.S. Atlantic Command, who had been my division commander in the 82nd, and my 1st Battalion commander back in 81, to figure out how to do this. And of course, it rolled downhill to Lucky Major Davis. And I had to figure out what this information warfare stuff was all about. And so I started getting involved in learning about psychological operations, deception, electronic warfare, operation security or OPSEC, and what later became cyber. And that led to a very unusual set of circumstances where I found myself in a very small SCIF, a secure compartmented information facility in Washington, D.C. on a Saturday morning briefing very important people. Not only General Sheehan, the combatant commander, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Deputy Secretary of State, the Director of Central Intelligence, now CIA Director, the Attorney General, people like that in the room on our plan to prevent war, and if we couldn't prevent it, to make it more efficient and effective. And it required more than the Defense Department to do this. It required across government. It required support from partners and allies and even industry.
Right.
And about this time, the Army had come up with a designation for information operations officers, functional area 30. So I became one of the first functional area 30s. And after my assignment there at U.S. Atlantic Command, I was selected by JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, to lead the information warfare effort for our sensitive special operations from 1998 to 2002. So back to Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty for my third time. And then following that, I became the United States Special Operations Command Information Warfare Director from 2002 to 2006. And so following those years in the special ops world and conducting information warfare, I returned to the regular Army as the commander of the Army's only active information warfare brigade from 2006 to 2008. And when I tried to retire, but instead was surprisingly promoted to brigadier general, and then from 2008 to 2015 when I retired, all of my assignments were cyber related. Cyber operations, cyber strategy, cyber policy, interagency cyber coordination, international cyber cooperation, and interaction with the defense industrial base on cybersecurity. So that's what led to all that. And, I had the chance to serve in combat or under hostile fire conditions in Grenada, Panama, Haiti, in the Balkans, hunting war criminals, in the initial invasion of Afghanistan, and then deploying there 3 additional times, once running day-to-day counterterrorism operations across Afghanistan as the chief of current ops for JSOC in 2002, and then 2 more times between 2006 and 2008 because I had information warfare teams supporting JSOC, and then I deployed 3 times to Iraq with my team supporting both special operations forces and conventional units during that same time period. And I tell you, I loved all of these assignments. It's hard to choose which one was the best, but I would say the most rewarding was commanding a Ranger company. And the most important was the last one, the Senior Military Cyber Advisor at the Pentagon and the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Cyber Policy, because I got to shape the overall cyber strategy and policy for DoD. I worked some very interesting and sensitive cyber issues across government, including some very interesting meetings in the White House Situation Room, and doing a lot of work to engage and shape cyber cooperation with our partner nations, allies, and even with our adversaries like China and Russia.
Wow, that is an incredible story and an incredible history. You mentioned commanding a Ranger company as being the most rewarding position. What made that position rewarding?
I think it was the culture and values of the Rangers. It's a special organization. I think it's summed up by the Ranger Creed. Every Ranger in a Ranger unit, whether it's the Ranger battalions or the Ranger Training Brigade, they commit that creed to memory and can recite it word for word at any time. And that creed means everything to the Rangers. And the teamwork, the camaraderie, the willingness to put yourself at risk to complete the mission, no matter the cost, and to protect your Ranger buddies is what makes it such a very special assignment. And being able to command a unit like that under adverse conditions it's very, very rewarding, and I'll never forget it.
Absolutely. What were some of the lessons you learned at that level that helped you be successful as you progressed up the ladder?
I think that those values and qualities that I talked about, they developed in me during my time. I think they were profound. And they're as good a use for the civilian world as they have been for the mission success that I was able to enjoy in those tactical assignments. And I learned a lot about leadership, also extremely important in the business world. In terms of the values, people are interested in folks who are good leaders. They're looking for folks with discipline, dedication, determination, people who are dependable and trustworthy, people who have the innovative spirit, who are agile, flexible, and resilient, people who know how to operate as a team, and they understand what getting the mission or the job done is all about. Those values and qualities, they're sound no matter the occupation, and I think they matter for the rest of your life. And I can talk about some of the lessons that I learned about leadership if you want me to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that resonates really well with our audience. In fact, this poster hanging on the wall behind me here is a World War II recruiting poster for the Army Air Corps. And it says, "The officers of today will be the executives of tomorrow." And I think that's a really powerful message of what the military does to set people up for success by learning these types of leadership lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'll just give you 5 lessons that I've learned that have been particularly important for me based on my experience and also from the people, the leaders who have taught these things to me over time. First lesson, trust yourself and be authentic. Trust your instincts. Listen to the voice in your head, the one that tells you things that you know are right, whether you want to listen to it or not. The ones that tell you the things you have to do, even though you may not want to. This idea of, faking it till you make it, in my experience, that doesn't work. Most folks can see right through leaders who are not authentic and they're just playing a certain role. Number 2, you got to have a strong sense of values. And I've talked about this. This is why values and qualities that contribute to personal character and organizational culture are so important. Like I mentioned in the Rangers, having these type of values, they result in trust and credibility as a leader. And there's nothing more important than the quality of trust when it comes to leadership. In my experience, the really big decisions in life, they're not made by the head or the heart. They might be informed by intellect or the head. They might be shaped by emotion or the heart. But the really big decisions, in my experiences, like life and death decisions, choosing your mate or your closest friends, risking your fortune, serious decisions that impact your family, those are based on the gut. And this all boils down to trust. And this gut feeling about trust, it comes from intuition, inspiration, imagination, and instinct. And instinct is shaped not only by the sum of your own life experiences, but I personally believe by hundreds of thousands of years of an evolution in the genetic fabric that has molded humanity over time. It's like I said, it's that inner voice that tells you what's right, even when it's not what you'd rather do. It's reflected in things like, a mother's instinct, or when you experience fight or flight response, or maybe that weird feeling you get when the hair stands up on the back of your neck and you just know that you're in danger. And that's about trusting your gut, your intuition, the inspiration you feel deep down inside, the imagination that suddenly springs into your mind seemingly from out of nowhere, and those instincts that kick in and demand your attention and your immediate decision to act. Third thing, you got to have a strong sense of vision. Leadership is about leading. It's the path and the destination. You have to define successful outcomes, and probably even more importantly, and maybe even harder, is achieving a shared sense of vision throughout the organization that you're leading. or else leadership is hollow. You have to be able to
Right.
articulate, inspire, gain buy-in, and enforce this vision throughout the organization. If you ever get a chance, go back and just Google search Steve Jobs and vision. He talks about this, and I think he kind of sums it up in a very important way that'll resonate with a lot of folks. That's one of the reasons why I'm reading this book that I mentioned. The fourth thing is you have to have an intense personal will. And that's, maybe you define that as grit or the gyro that guides your life and keeps you moving effectively in a direction. Effective leaders, they have to possess this, and it's an energy that powers decisions and actions throughout the organization. But, there's a note of caution here, because this grit has to be tempered by the values that I described, or it can lead to abuse. You could argue that Hitler had grit, but obviously
Right.
his values did not lead to the right types of outcomes. And then the final one, I would say, I got this from sitting down one-on-one with Secretary of Defense Bob Gates back in the 2011 timeframe. I greatly admired him. He was CIA director. He was a very, very effective and humble Secretary of Defense. And I asked him about, his views on leadership. And this is what he told me. He said you had to have the ability to distinguish between antelopes and chipmunks. And what that meant was you have to separate what's important from what's not important. And of course, that changes over time, especially with large organizations. And so his view was, this is all about being able to set priorities correctly. If you're a lion and you waste all your energy going around chasing chipmunks, you're going to be tired and you're not going to be full. You have to be able to find the antelopes and put your energy into what's going to matter. And so that's what that lesson was all about.
That's a great analogy to break down seeking out those things that are important. And I think that's something that's often challenging in the workplace, both in the military and in corporate America, is everything around you can seem urgent. But how do you decipher between that urgency and what's truly important?
Yeah, my first battalion commander, Mike Steele, later became the 82nd Airborne Division commander when I worked for him again, and then became the J3 of U.S. Atlantic Command when I worked for him for a third time. When we were lieutenants and he was the battalion commander, he would devote a tremendous amount of time developing us lieutenants as leaders. And I remember him telling us, you have to be able to distinguish between what's important and what's urgent. Urgent are those things that are pressuring you to make decisions quickly, but they may not result in the type of outcomes that are important if you look at the big picture. And so he would encourage us to take a look at things and really focus on those things that were important in the big picture. And if we were wasting our time on a lot of things that were just urgent, we were probably not addressing the things that mattered most. And so for me, that's how I was brought up as a young leader in the infantry, and it stuck with me all these years.
And a really important thing to bring up is the fact that from an early age on, coming up in the military, there were senior leaders above you reaching down to mentor and shape and develop you growing. And that's something that I think a lot of folks miss about the military and don't necessarily see from the outside looking in, is that the entire structure is designed from the bottom up to help individuals grow and to perform better and to succeed and to reach new opportunities. The image is often, well, you've signed up for it, now you get voluntold to go do things, which does happen from time to time. But in reality, the majority of the culture is, how can we cultivate John, or how can we cultivate Henry into becoming the next leader of this organization?
Yeah, I've been told by several of my mentors that the most important job you have is building, training, refining your successor. And I was very fortunate in all my assignments, almost all of them, that I had leaders who were willing to invest time in developing me as a leader on a personal basis and on a group basis. Like Mike Steele. And, when people used to ask me, what does it take to become a general? Well, besides saying, I have no freaking idea how I got to be a general, which is really the truth. When I think about it, it really comes down to a couple of things. And one of them is having these leaders who, for whatever reason, found it important to invest their time in developing me and building me and developing me and teaching me. I think that was a very important factor in my personal growth and progression through the ranks. Another reason was because I was surrounded by people who were the very best in the world at what they do. And I think a lot of that kind of rubs off on you. And then, finally, I think that some of it is just really it's based on some luck and timing. Now, of course, you can create your own luck. Like I said, I got every assignment that I ever asked for. Only one of them I probably shouldn't have asked for, but I got it anyway. And so, from the first to the last, just taking charge of the path that you're on, even though it may change. Mine took a drastic turn in the mid '90s and went from traditional combat infantry to information warfare, and then that led to cyber. But you got to be open to possibilities, and then you have to take advantage of those. And some of that is just luck and timing. But I would say those three factors are how I got on the path that I ended up on.
Well, and sir, as you're progressing down that path and on that journey, was there a particular time when you faced some pretty daunting challenges that you had to overcome? Maybe a time when you thought, I might throw in the white towel here, this may not be the path for me, and you figured out how to overcome and move past that?
Well, actually, that's an interesting story as well. It happened to me very early on when I was a cadet at West Point. And, at West Point, once you set foot in your first class as a junior, or we called them cows, you're committed back then to 5 years after graduation as a commissioned officer. So that summer before the junior year, my tactical officer wanted me to go to Ranger School. But I wasn't sure I wanted to commit to a career in the Army. The first 2 years at West Point, especially the first year, seemed like a lot of silliness. Like the inmates were in charge of the prison. The upper class treated you bad, and it was supposedly to put pressure on you, to teach you to perform under pressure. I just thought it was silly. So I asked my tactical officer to send me to airborne school and then to what we called CTLT, Cadet Leadership Training. And you spend about a month or so with an active Army unit as a platoon leader. And I asked him to send me to the worst unit in the Army because I wanted to see what the worst was like. And so he sent me to the 197th at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, Georgia. It was called the $97th. It was undermanned, understaffed, under-resourced. You're supposed to have 41 people in a platoon. I had the largest platoon at 19 people. There was drug abuse, alcohol abuse, spouse abuse, illiteracy. It was horrible. And during my time there, I had two examples, two different company commanders. One horrible, the first one horrible, the second one great. There was a change of command while I was there. I won't name the horrible captain, but the great captain's name was Tim Trainer. And, the horrible captain, I first got there, I had missed the opportunity to do my weapon qualification for the expert infantryman badge competition. And so my sponsor, who was a West Point cadet and now a lieutenant, took me into the company commander's office and said to the company commander, Cadet Davis missed the range qualification with our company. I'd like to get your permission to take him out and qualify with the next company. And the captain looked up at me and he said, we can take care of that right here in my office. And I looked at him and, and my sponsor kind of elbowed me to just shut up. And he saw that, the captain saw that, and he said, that honor stuff doesn't mean anything out here in the real Army. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this guy is unbelievably horrible. And so that was my first experience in the real Army. And at that point, it was like, I don't want any part of this. And then there was a change of command. And Captain Tim Traynor came in, took over the company. First day on the job, he sent all of the platoons in a deuce and a half out to different places on the reservation without a map, and told us all before we left, you're going to have to navigate back to garrison. And, that was quite a challenge. I happened to make it. I mean, I led my platoon and made it back. I don't think any of the other platoons made it back, and we had to mount a search party to go get them. But he set up a weight bench in his office, and during lunch, he would make me come in, and we would lift weights, and he would mentor me. And he basically said, we need people like you in the Army. One person can make a difference. And he was living proof of that. And so he's the reason I went back to, to class as a junior and finished my time at West Point and then, joined the Army. That does show you how important one person can be in a leadership position. It made a difference in my life, and I'll never forget it.
Absolutely. They say that people don't quit organizations, they quit leaders and leave an organization because of leadership. And it's the exact opposite is true as well. People join and remain and stay in organizations because of good leadership. And that's something that is definitely evident in your story and how that's been cultivated in you. As you were leaving the Army, how did that cultivation in leadership and personal development set you up for success as you were entering the civilian workforce?
I think that the values and qualities that were developed in me during my time in service were put to very good use as a civilian, and they've helped me to continue to be successful in the business world. And I've mentioned what those qualities are. I think that people who have spent time in the military are people with discipline, dedication, determination. They're dependable, they're trustworthy. Commander's intent is a big thing in the Army, because even though a plan doesn't survive first contact with the enemy, but if you know the overall intent, people, especially in the combat arms, they figure out a way to get it done. And that innovative spirit, that agility and flexibility and resilience is very, very important, I believe, in life following the military. People are looking for folks who have those qualities and know how to get the mission done, the job done or the mission done. And so I think that those are the values that it doesn't matter what your occupation is. Like I said before, they matter for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. That's key, and who you are and what you value shapes your opportunities that pop up around you. So tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing now with Palo Alto Networks.
Well, Palo Alto is the world's largest cybersecurity company, pure play. I mean, like Microsoft, Cisco, they do more than cybersecurity, and they're obviously bigger than us. But for companies that are just cybersecurity, we're the world's largest, and we're in more than 150 countries around the world. We've got more than 15,000 employees. We're a big company, and we cover cybersecurity related to network, cloud, security operations center, and threat intelligence and incident response. So the whole gamut of things when it comes to cybersecurity. My role as Vice President of Public Sector is really just to, if I boiled it down to one sentence, it would be to create and maintain trusted advisory relationships with leaders, both in the public sector and in some cases in the commercial sector, and share the lessons that I've learned, best practices, and just generally become a trusted advisory resource for them to help them with their cybersecurity related challenges. And it's not just in the U.S., it takes me all over the world.
Oh, that's really incredible. So as we start to wrap and close things up here, what would be your top pieces of advice for the young folks listening to this podcast thinking about the military as an option?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about that. I try to mentor not just folks transitioning from the military, which I spend a pretty good chunk of time doing, but also the younger generation because they're the future. And I'd go back to what I said earlier about becoming a part of something that's bigger than you. I know it sounds corny, but it's really true that the more you give, the more you receive when it comes to life's most precious gifts. And service and sacrifice builds character, which is so important. And it helps you realize what you have to offer in being a respectable and responsible member of society. Those values and qualities that I spoke about, those result in personal character and organizational culture in a way that's so important. And I can think of nothing more important to an organization's success than the qualities and values and the resulting personal character and culture that any organization embraces and makes its daily goal to achieve. Those are the things that define who we are, the best of who we are, and who we aspire to be each and every day, on good days, but especially on bad days. The Army teaches you how to live a life of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Those are the 7 Army values. It's the same in no matter which service that you're talking about, but those are the 7 Army values. And I can tell you they still serve me very well today. And one more thing, the uniforms are pretty cool too.
Absolutely. And some great experiences and opportunities. I know it's been a huge part of my success as an individual was my military service. Same for you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, and thanks for sharing your story.
My pleasure, Henry. I really enjoyed it. My best to you and especially to your audience. Hope you found it interesting.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. You too.
Did you like what you heard on today's podcast? If so, do me a quick favor and hit the like and subscribe button. That way you'll stay updated on all the new content that I publish. Also, visit me on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and tell me what you want to hear more about. I love to hear your comments. That way I can continue to produce content that you love and enjoy. You can also check out my website, henrybeeman.com.